Hi, John here again with VoWac Publishing. I was just looking through my handbook of teacher tips. This is a tool that you probably want to keep kind of close by your side. If you get stuck, aren't sure what to do in a lesson, this is probably going to help you out. There's some other teacher tips in here that you can refer to, but handbook of teacher tips, keep it handy. One of the things we're going to talk about today, or on this particular clip, is going to be the auditory drill. The auditory drill is, in essence, you teaching your kids how to listen. Don't get confused between a hearing skill and a listening skill. Most kids can hear. I understand that we have kids with hearing discrimination problems or discrepancy problems and those kinds of things. But most of the kids can hear. But most of our kids don't listen. How many times do you have your kids say, "Teacher, can you say that again? Can you repeat that again? I didn't hear it. I wasn't listening. Can you say it again?" You know, I guess I always ask teachers, how many of you spend 60 seconds a day repeating instructions? 2 minutes a day, 3 minutes a day repeating instructions. Well, let me break it down for you. Is that basically if you spend just 90 seconds or so every day repeating instructions, you will lose a day and a half of instruction overall. And we have to come to an agreement that if you're repeating instructions when kids should have heard it the first time, it's not a best teaching practice. You're the one being trained. The kids are training you to repeat. So if you're into that habit, you need to get out of that habit. So it takes a lot of work to do that. But we're going to talk about the auditory drill. The auditory drill is a key component to every VoWac lesson, kindergarten through 4th grade. You're going to be doing the auditory drill. And yes, even in kindergarten, kids will be doing the auditory drill. So I've randomly taken a 1st grade teacher guide, and I'm on lesson 86. The auditory drill is one of the first things that you do to begin a lesson. I like doing the auditory drill. Remember, we talked about doing lessons and breaking them up, that you're not doing the entire VoWac lesson all in one foul swoop. You're going to do a section here, you're going to do a section here, and then finish it up after recess or whatever. I like to recommend that the auditory drill be done right before recess time, because if a student is going to cause you a problem, then it's probably going to be during this particular activity, because you need to keep it moving fast paced, and you're not going to be able to wait for everybody. And because you can't wait for everybody, somebody may or may not be causing some problems, so you're going to have to keep an eye on that. One of the processes that you do, and you look in the teacher guide, and it tells you we're going to be doing sounds or words or sentences, and basically what we do is you're going to say the sound, the student is going to repeat it, they've heard it twice, they should be able to write it. So if you're doing the sound, for example, the first one I have here is G, and they repeat G. They write it on their board, you say show, they hold it up with 2 hands. The reason they hold it up with 2 hands is because then you don't have a kid waving their board around and smacking the neighbor and everything else. So just a classroom control thing. They show you and you wrote, and they say G, golden goose, G. Erase, they erase. Your next sound, ah. They repeat, ah. So they write show, and they do this. Some kids might do this. They might put that breve on there to show that it's a short A sound. Doesn't matter, you can ask them to do it or not, but as long as they have the A. And you wrote short A, Anton, apple, ah, and you look at everybody's and give them a thumbs up and go on to the next one. So you move on to this. And so if you have a letter that has 2 sounds, for example, if we had Z, and the kids all say Z, and you might want to give them a cue, and you say 2 ways to do this, 2 ways to write this. And they go, ah, that's right. So they write like so, and they'd write Z S. Say Z, and they circle it. The reason they circle that is because these letters both say the same sound. They're a family, if you will. We write the Z first because that's the most common. The second most common way to spell the Z sound is with the S. So we write them most common, next most common, and so on. So then they erase, and so on, and they write these things. And so they might have a sound like qua, qua, and they repeat that. They write it, and they write QU, Queen's Quilt, qua. If you do a word, looks something like this. Here's a name, Blaine, and they all say Blaine. Well, you might have a Blaine that's spelled like this when they show it. You might have a Blaine spelled like this when they show it. You might have both in the same room. That's okay. Acknowledge it. And you wrote capital B-L-A-N-E, Blaine. And they erase, and so on. The next word is going to be a sight word. You can't pronounce this. I mean, you can say it, but you can't spell it. So it's a sight word, and it is what. And they all say what, and they write what. W-H-A-T, what. And so on. And that is how to use the auditory drill and how to go through the auditory drill. Take some practice. You need to keep the pace moving on this. If a child gets it wrong, let's talk a little bit about that. So you've got, whatever, 12, 15, 20 kids, and a child gets it wrong. So you have the word has, let's just say the sight word has, and they all go has, and you have a child that writes this. What you need to do is train your kids. Yet if they get it wrong, and you're going to cue them when they get it wrong, we're not going to point it out. You might want to say, look at your neighbors, decide which one is correct. You might want to have a child at the board who's working at the board, and this child would write this on the board, and then they would cover it up and show, and they'd step aside, and all the kids would be able to see if they have it right or wrong. So if this child that has H-A-Z sees that it's actually H-A-S, you might want to give them a cue, very simply a nod, and go like this, meaning that they need to erase what they have incorrect. They need to write the word correctly 3 times. You're going to move on. You're going to the next word. The next word might be 9 or slide or whatever. The child that got it wrong is going to write has 3 times. So when everybody else is showing 9 from the next word, the child that got it wrong is holding this up. So when you see that he has it correct, you kind of give him a wink, a nod, a thumbs up. If you happen to be by him, you know, a shoulder tap going, yeah, that's good. Erase, and you go to your next word. Your next word is shade. Now everybody, including the kid that got has incorrect, is now on shade. So it keeps everybody on track. It takes some practice, but you really don't have time to stop for every mistake that goes on. A lot of this has to be some self-correcting. The reason I say do this before recess is because if you have a child who figures you're not going to stop and make the correction anyway, he can write anything he wants because you're not going to stop. This is where you might want to kind of informally meet with him prior to recess, and you're going to have to find out, does he not know how to do this? Or is he just not keeping up because he doesn't feel like keeping up? Can't he keep up? You're going to have to find out what the problem is. But if he's not doing something that he's fully capable of doing, it may be a situation where he does his auditory drill during recess while everybody else is out playing. Some kind of a consequence that kind of gets him back on track to do things. So think about those things. That's the auditory drill. Again, you'll find that the how-to in the Handbook of Teacher Tips, so refer to that. Practice this, keep the pace moving. It can be a lot of fun, so see you next time. Thanks.